Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this panel discussion, where this afternoon we're going to be covering a couple of topics around the state of insurance in Africa. And with me today, I'm Andrew de Kock. I'm going to be the moderator of this panel. And today with me, I have Jerome Katz, who's the head of group strategy and investment at MUA. We also have Adelaide Odhiambo, who's just joined us now. Welcome, Adelaide. She's CEO of Blue Wave Insurance Agency. And then we have Mohab Aboueita, who's the co-founder and CEO of Amanlik, an insurtech out of Egypt. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for making the time to have a chat this afternoon. So just for a little bit of background and some house rules, if you like, for our session, we really want to make it as interactive as possible. So what I'd like to encourage you to do is to use the Q&A function. Pop your questions, any questions you might have for the panelists. If you want someone specific to answer them, you can direct them by using their name. But really, this is your session. We've had a good few conversations around the topic, but we really want to answer your questions as much as we possibly can. And there's no way that we can cover everything today, but we'll do our best to cover as many of the different topics as we possibly can. So just by way of introducing or picturing the scene, if you like, Africa is really suffering a pandemic of poverty. The thing is, though, that both cultural and social structures very often mean that help your neighbor is the kind of insurer of last resort. And that does mean that most people somehow manage to survive in some way, but they're really only scraping through. I think, for me, insurance really equals resilience, especially to those that are the most vulnerable in our society. But if we look at the continent today, with a couple of notable exceptions, the penetration of insurance across the region is extremely low, and it's not improving. On the other hand, there are countries around the world who've actually made quite a lot of progress. So the Philippines is one example, where they've had much greater success in reaching underserved sectors. So really what we're trying to do today is look at what's missing. What are we missing? What should we be doing? What are the things that need to change, and maybe shine a little bit of a light on them? So I guess let's start with you, Jerome. From an incumbent insurer's perspective, what are some of the key things you think we need to focus on?
Thank you, Andrew, and good afternoon, everybody. So it's a tough question, and as a traditional insurer, so MUA is based in Mauritius, but we are also in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and Rwanda, and Seychelles. And more than 100 years of experience in East Africa, and more than 75 years in Mauritius. And so, as you may understand, we have a big legacy. And this is why we are called incumbent or traditional insurer. I believe that the main challenge is this shift toward the customer. And traditionally, traditional insurer by design are structured around processes and underwriting. In fact, I was shocked when I arrived in East Africa that we are not called insurance company, we are called underwriters. And I believe that the change needs to happen because we need to focus on clients. And to focus on client, I would say that basically there is three things to focus on. The first one is simplicity. Insurance, unfortunately, is not known as simple things, as simple policies, etc. So we need to be simple. This is the first thing. We need to work on the policies, on the way to subscribe, on everything. All the documentation need to be simple. So first thing, simplicity, to be customer centric. Second thing is accessibility. Accessibility, especially in East Africa, is the key. We need to be accessible. We need to people, customers need to subscribe, to do their claim online, through their mobile, through the new world, as they are doing for the banks. So second thing is the distribution model have to change from the traditional brick and mortar with agents and brokers. And then third thing is the purpose. Insurance is there to help people. It's not made for rich people. It's there to help people. And we need to change this purpose. We need to create this purpose for everybody, for all the population. There is a need for insurance. So the third aspect for me is to set up this purpose. I hope I answered your question, Andre.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and I think all those things are vitally important for us to consider. Adelaide,
yeah.
One of the things that Jerome mentioned was, we needed simpler products. So, if we look at product design, what are some of the key, if that's a key factor, what are some of the things that we aren't doing that we should be doing?
Just before I quickly answer that, I just wanted to echo Jerome's points on really what are the barriers that insurance has. And I wanted to add that we also have to think about the barrier of cost, understanding. You try to reach that when you talk about simplicity, which is brilliant. And then lastly, trust. There's a huge trust gap within the continent when it comes to insurance. But now back to my question, Andrew, I believe that we need to start looking at where Africa is. Africa has survived as a continent despite the poverty levels. Insurance has existed in somewhat traditional mechanisms. And it will be very helpful to start digging into what are these already existing traditional mechanisms that are available and start seeing how are they working, what is not working with how they understand insurance, and most importantly, how do we start innovating insurance from that mindset? I'll refer to some focus groups which we have done in our organization, Blue Wave, and what we saw is we went out to the microinsurance product, and we had the perception that the buy-in is not as high because of a cost factor. But once you wade through the 30th minute of explaining the product, the customers are more than willing to triple the premiums for more perceived benefits for themselves and the family. And this cost factor has always been one great impediment on the incumbents in upcoming fintechs when they come to their product design. So we have to start saying that there's a big gap in product research and just getting rid of the norms and the current company structures and really going out to the market to interact with the client and the consumer and really listening before going out to create products. The habit that we have now are what I call boardroom products, regulated boardroom approved products, which very many times fail. And most of insurance companies in Africa are harboring dusty shelves of lots and lots of products that are not really working for the people. So focus on market research and do a deeper dive in the trust factor to be able to bridge some of these huge barriers. Thank you.
Thanks, Adelaide. Yeah, I think, and that really again ties back into what Jerome was speaking about. And Mohab, I think maybe just taking that one step further, for most of the people we're trying to reach, insurance is a foreign concept. How do we need to view that? What can we do?
First of all, thank you, Andrew, for having me. I'm very delighted to be here. What I would say is that we need to think outside of our scope of as people that work in insurance. We need to be more into ecosystem building, not just talking about insurance and thinking about insurance. So we work in Africa, and Africa needs a lot of things, not just insurance. And there are a lot of things that complement insurance. So I would say, like, see whatever is working right now, whatever insurance mechanism is working, exactly like my fellow colleagues said, and put insurance or embed insurance into the system somehow, with working on the simplicity of the product and the simplicity of the claims as well, to bridge the gap of the trust.
Excellent. So what I'd like to do now is maybe just open the floor. You know, I've got a number of different questions, and we can take the conversation in a number of different ways. And let's just see, you know, let's just see where we go. So maybe, you know, if a couple of you want to answer the questions as we go through them, we'll take it from there. What I'd like to do as we end that section is just kind of wrap up with some kind of quick fire you know, responses, just to tie it all together. But before we get there, so one of the questions is, like, where is Africa insured? You know, what, and maybe this one you want to take, Adelaide. You know, what are some of the things that people are doing today? Because, you know, clearly, if people are in abject poverty and they're still surviving, they have something out there.
Absolutely. I think Kenya right now is insured through religious, largely. I think the key traditional insurance instrument for Africa is the religious setup. I would almost confidently say that 80% of the population, especially when we're looking at the underserved market, have very intrinsic relationships with their pastors, have very intrinsic relationships with their religious leaders, and they invest quite significant amount of cash flow in regards to faith-based institutions. So we see a very big commitment to tithes. We see a very big commitment in continent to offerings. And we look at people consistently believing and taking 10% of their monthly income to church, because they know that their pastor will pray for them at the point when they're unwell. Very many times the pastor is the one who steps in when there's a funeral and mobilizes the community to fundraise for these people for burials or hospitalization. So I think the core of where Africa is insured right now is the church. And if you want to be successful in product development around insurance, and specifically around inclusive insurance, then we want to start really looking analytically into the church-based infrastructure and see if we can bear a little bit more of that burden away from the church leadership, because they are their underwriters, they are their insurers, and they give back to their communities, and many times they fail in that regard. We also have instruments such as stable banking. These are the well-known, most trusted kind of savings instruments. So insurance is missing out big time in regards to the stable banking kind of infrastructure, which kind of morphed out of cooperatives and circles, which are more elaborate financial services. We see now, like in the rise of M-Pesa across the continent. M-Pesa is just beginning to roll out in Ethiopia. It is in very many of the Vodacom markets as well across the continent. And M-Pesa offers what they call Fuliza, which is an emergency. It's an emergency fund, which for shopping, it's an emergency fund if you need any kind of goods and services. And very many times it's also being used to pay for hospital bills, etc. And this fund for those who are not as creditable begin as low as $30. So there's access to a quick $30 through Fuliza, through the M-Pesa Vodacom kind of platform. Okay. So that is where Africa is being insured. There's a lot more, but we can discuss that in
Sure.
future. Thank you.
Mohab, I mean, you're far north in the continent. Do you see similar kinds of things? How do product lineups stack up in your part of Africa?
I'm sorry, Andrew, there was a connection error.
Okay. I was just saying, Adelaide's spoken a lot about kind of churches and community-based insurance, kind of table finance. In Northern Africa, how do your customers, the markets that you serve, how do they view the, if you like, useful products? Where do you see those?
Yeah, so when we started working in insurance, I was working traditionally selling insurance over cold calling clients, and I noticed three things. The first thing is that only the top 1% of society were buying insurance from me, and it took them like 3 weeks to get their membership card, and the claims were done manually with endless amount of paperwork. So all in all, the experience was not very appealing, but they're the top 1% of the society, and they have the money to do it. So in order for us to make it more appealing to the middle income class, let's say in Egypt, which is approximately 50 million people in itself, and the insurance penetration is less than 1%, we will need to work on the product structure for sure, and the distribution as well. The concept of embedded insurance, the one I was talking about, like have it with mobile operators. It's going to help with their ARPU matrix, like the matrix. They have these metrics of like the revenues per user, so it's going to help them cross sell and upsell. Yeah, and that's it. Also in Egypt, I would like to add on what Adelaide was saying, that we have the money circle concept. So and instead of going to a bank, instead of going to insurance, we have a money circle where like you get 10 people and each contributes a monthly amount, and then each month every person will get the full amount.
Excellent. Jerome, I think, so what I'm hearing is that there's, the community, or insurance is quite community focused, even if it's just, operating in a bit of a gap. If I said that, insurers are competing with each other and missing, if you like, the focus, or not focusing enough on what customers really want or need, would you agree with that? And how, if you disagree, or either way, what do you see changing, in terms of the way that insurers are engaging with client needs?
Yeah, and Sam, from a traditional insurer's perspective, I do not disagree with that, and I totally, in fact, agree. And to emphasize on what Adelaide said, and what the need and where all insurers has to work together is on financial literacy. If a pastor can attract clients, can attract people, this is because he explained the needs of insurance, and all the insurer and the regulating bodies and everybody has to work together to increase this financial literacy. It will be the only way to increase the penetration. If insurer and traditional bodies are not doing it, some other people is going to do it for us. And Adelaide, you spoke about Safaricom and M-Pesa. So they did it for the banks, on behalf of banks, because the banks didn't want to go into this segment. So we'll have exactly the same issues as traditional insurer. Yeah.
Excellent. So I'd like to move on a little bit. One of the things that really strikes me across, across Africa is, people from the outside in often talk about Africa as if it's this one homogeneous area, with one clientele. But I think we probably have one of the most complex kind of client segment structures that's out there. I mean, you have highly educated people earning lots of money living rurally. You have people, subsistence farming with no education living rurally. You have highly educated people who are in poverty in the urban areas. And so it goes on. Maybe for Mohab, how do we deal with the processes around insurance? I mean, insurance isn't that simple. How do we make that work?
So from my own perspective and for my own benefit, I'd say like deregulate the industry all the way. I know this might be like a dream, or like maybe you'll tell me meet me next century, because it's not going to happen. But the cross-border expansion of successful entities like I'm sure like Aboueita and etc. is based on the regulation of each country, because it's different from one country to another, and the industry is very highly regulated to the extent that it's driving away potential clients and making the whole process complicated and expensive. So to answer your question about having Africa as one entity or one customer, is completely different. Even in North Africa, you would find like Egypt is way different than Tunisia, for example, or like the insurance penetration in Egypt, which is about less than 1% of the premium contribution to GDP, and it's higher in other countries, like in Kenya, for example. So we're modeling ourselves after Kenya. But again, it all comes back to the regulation and how easy the cross-border expansion is, because the code itself of the online tools and the digital world, they don't know about boundaries or like borders, but again, the operations and the licenses and the hassle is different from one country to another.
And maybe for Adelaide, you know, I guess, you know, if you deal with established companies, where does legacy fit in? You know, how do we address that? Because we can't, you know, it's impossible just to rip it out and start again. How do your processes and that need to take that into account?
I think the immediate focus that most of the incumbents, the regional, the traditional kind of insurance, conventional concepts and mind thinking, there has to be a huge mind shift, a huge drive for change management, because we've seen even COVID knocking on the door globally and forcing people to change how they do business as usual. And if this didn't happen, I shudder to think at where we would still be. But you could see that even the impact is still very wanting, and insurance companies are still going back to the old kind of mindsets on how insurance was done before, when now the world is opening up again. I think what we need to emphasize now is to keep on the change management story, because we have seen that the world can shift very radically and can even potentially force you to lose business. So if we don't start adopting innovation, and not just in Zoom, I mean, that is not the only innovation that has come in the insurance space, that now meetings and people can work remotely. We have not yet seen that strong drive of them digitalizing completely and really shifting how innovation within insurance is done, except for Zoom and home meetings.
Yeah, I guess that's the difference between digitizing and digitalizing. I guess some people use that. Jerome, that's certainly something that you must have had to grapple with. You mentioned up front that you have a proud and long history as a company. You know, where does that sit in your radar?
This is the first aspect, the change management and the business transformation is at the front of all our strategies, and this is definitely what we want to achieve. But the legacy is there, our systems are there, our people are there, and it's complicated to make that change. In your market, Andrew, you know better than me, you have very traditional players, and what they did is they launched new insurance company, fully digital. Same shareholders, but new management team, new system, new process, new products, everything new. Unfortunately, we perhaps do not have the capabilities and the money to do it in East Africa. and the critical size to start with, as well as the communication linked to it, the budget and communication budget linked to the launch of a digital insurance player in East Africa. I don't believe that traditional insurance may afford to do it right now. But this is clearly the challenge and the complexity that traditional insurers have, how to effectively transform the business. I recently heard from Deloitte Consulting for Africa that 70% of the business transformation project in insurance are not working, have failed. So yeah, this is a situation, complicated situation that we have to manage, and we have, as the entire industry, have to find solution. As I mentioned earlier, otherwise some other people will find solution for us, and we will lose the market. And same as bank. Bank is a perfect example of what happened in the market. And let's say that we are at least 10 years behind banks in the insurance industry in East Africa.
And Mohab, maybe let me throw that over to you. In terms of whether it's transformation of insurers or disruption from outside of the industry, what do you, how do you see that happening? What do you think's most likely to happen? Disruption from outside or transformation from within?
So I think, Jerome, you want to take this? Yeah. Okay, all right. So yeah, I think I will talk about Egypt, for example. No, Egypt is not going to be disrupted from outside. It's very, very tough already for people inside. The market is tough. The financial awareness is not there, and I mean it's better than before, but it's still very, very, very far away from reaching the average anywhere else. So yeah, I don't think the market is appealing enough to other or outside players right now, given the how hard is it to get a license and to be operational in the country. This is a huge opportunity for us Egyptians to disrupt from the inside, but it's going to need a lot of patience and a lot of tenacity.
Excellent. Jerome, you look like you're itching to say something.
Yeah, and I will be happy also to have the answer of Adelaide on this subject. My hope is that we will find a mix. The disruption will come also from FinTech and InsurTech and also with the insurance company all together. I'm sure that we can work all together. And in fact, perhaps the InsurTech have the agility that traditional insurer does not have, and by working together, we can, I hope, disrupt the market. Yeah.
So Adelaide, we can't leave you out of this question.
Absolutely.
But I guess there's that. And if we can keep it relatively short, and then I think that also starts to bring in the idea of where does the regulation come in? Mohab's mentioned that. What role does the regulator play in regulation in general?
I think if the regulator steps up and innovates much faster than the incumbents, then there's going to be a huge shift, because passing this baton to the insurance companies doesn't seem to be spurring the kind of quick, swift response we require. So we had the introduction of sandboxes in Kenya, and unfortunately it didn't go too far. But if Kenya became and still stayed as a pioneer of insurance sandboxes within the continent, then would have seen quite huge duplicates coming to play, and that kind of sandbox environment would have been revolutionary in enabling the innovators. I strongly believe, and forgive me, Mohab, innovation is going to come from outside until the structures, the mind shifts within the traditional insurance companies. We are still going to see the same business as usual, because unfortunately there's no huge incentive yet to really hit the 98% of the market that is underserved. So first things first, regulator has got to just start kicking some serious punches, setting up random sandboxes all over the place. And I think most of the insurance companies are going to be forced to toe the line and start being a bit more serious about innovation around insurance.
Okay. Well, thanks. Can you believe that we're already getting to the end of our session, and it just doesn't really feel like we've even started yet. So I'm gonna ask each of you in 30, well, give you a minute, 30 seconds for each side of this. Same question. What thing do you think is going to change the most in the next 5 years, and what would you most like to see happen in the next 5 years? And let's start with Jerome.
In the next 5 years, I hope that not necessarily the subscription, but the claim for medical, for example, for health, be online. And I hope that final clients will use more and more digital tools in all the way that they are using insurance, for driving, for telematics, for parametrics, agricultural, and it looks quite modern, and yeah, but I believe it is feasible for the next 5 years to see more and more usage of digital tools. And what I wish is more and more financial literacy.
Yep.
This is my wish.
Good. Maybe 30 seconds, Adelaide.
I would love to see every single African having access to insurance, something very similar to M-Pesa of insurance across the continent, where we can map out every M-Pesa outlet, their banking kiosks now, every single corner you go. So I'd love to see that within the next 5 years, I think even less, we can hack this in 2 years, quite literally, if we work hard. 5 years feels too long. Seeing that insurance has been embedded on each and every of these FinTech kiosks that are already reaching the very, very last mile. I see that as feasible. I see that as practical, and 5 years is also too long a dream, because COVID has given us a reason to kick boost that kind of innovation.
Thank you. 30 seconds, Mohab. We've got less than a minute on the clock.
Yeah, so having said the areas of development with the continent, I'd say one positive thing to end with, the market in Egypt is growing double digit year over year. And I think in 5 years, it's going to be more than double what it is right now.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much to all of you for your contributions today. It really has been enlightening having this discussion. I wish we could go on for a lot longer. And I think the key things for me that have come out is we need to cater to our customers. We need to stop competing with each other and focus on what customers really want and need. We need to manage change, and it's more change, not the technology, but the way that we think about the work that we do. And it's both an opportunity and a responsibility on our behalf to make sure that insurance succeeds and penetrates much greater, as Adelaide said.